Hello and welcome to the second part of our Zoella audience segment, this time looking more into audience theories and applying the information we got last week. So this week I'm only going to give you one task, which is at the end of this PowerPoint. Please don't just skip to the end, otherwise you will have missed the content that's going to go into that task. It is going to be an extended essay, which would normally be a 30 marker in the A2 exam, but I realise that's going to be quite difficult to get yourself down to do. So all I'm looking for is 3 paragraphs and 15 marks for this. We'll halve the mark scheme and hopefully come out to the same kind of conclusion. So, cultivation theory. So hopefully you can remember that this guy's name is George Gerbner, who came up with this concept. And what did the theory suggest? Gerbner basically, at a sort of fundamental level, believed that exposure to repeated patterns of representation over long periods of time will begin to shape and influence the way an audience perceives the world around them. We can cultivate a view, we can cultivate an opinion. The longer you see a certain representation, you're going to start to believe that. Examples could be the way we see our own body image. The more you see perfect kind of Hollywood physiques, the less positive you might feel about your own body. The more you see women in certain positions, for example the 1950s with Tide were cultivating an idea that women were supposed to be domestic. These days we do not see those cultivations. It's actually now illegal, according to Advertising Standards Agency, ASA rules, to perpetuate gender stereotypes in advertising. So we are seeing less and less and less of that, though a number of advertisers are still guilty of it. It reinforces typically dominant ideologies. So it should generally support hegemonic controls. It should generally support that kind of society. So how can we apply this to Zoella's online output? Think about whether Zoella is cultivating gender representations. Is she cultivating what it means to be a certain type of woman? Is she cultivating what it means to be an influencer, a YouTube personality? What is she actually representing of herself, and is anything being consistently cultivated? Are we seeing things across her content repeatedly? If you see something as a one-off, you can't really say it's a cultivation. However, if it's something that is consistent week in, week out, it's being cultivated according to Gerbner. This guy is called Henry Jenkins. He is our fandom theorist. So he believes that fans are active participants in the construction and circulation of textual meanings. We are part of the process of understanding a text. A key example of this might be, the latest Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They released a trailer, everyone thought Sonic looked creepy and weird, so they pulled it back and they completely remade the film. You've got to argue that fans there are active participants in the construction of meaning there. Fans can appropriate text and read in ways that are not fully authorised. That's called textual poaching. So there are certain people who will watch bad movies deliberately. There's a film out there called The Room, which I believe I've mentioned before in lessons in this context. And it's generally a really bad film. It's made by a guy who self-financed it, self-directed it, self-wrote it with no real expert knowledge in those fields. And fans of that film now watch it deliberately to make fun of the bad moments. When they made the film, they didn't really have much time to do set dressings, and so they put lots and lots of pictures from basically the American equivalent of Dunelm on the wall, which randomly had loads of spoons in them, and the fans will throw spoons at the screen when they're watching the film. Clearly the director of that film didn't want his dramatic, romantic film to have people throwing spoons at the screen when they watched it. So that is definitely watching the film in a not fully authorised way by the producer. You're taking it into your own account. We can construct our own identities through borrowing and infecting mass culture as part of our participatory culture. So, people will make comments and say things they hear in YouTube videos. Certain words come into our kind of language, our lexis, from YouTube videos or from films. Certain phrases become popular because they've been in a film, and we begin to participate in culture. 5 or 6 years ago, people weren't using words like lit. Arguably, they're not really anymore because they've gone out of fashion, but these things come and go from media often. And again, how can we apply this to Zoella's online output? Remember, we looked into all the different ways she embraces her fans. There's fan fiction out there. Fans are doing things like hashtag I stand with Zoella when people are nasty to her. There's lots and lots and lots of fan participation in her work. People make their own fan videos. People will do kind of reaction videos to Zoella. A lot of people make fun of her. There's a great video, which I can't remember if you've seen or not, from Jackmate, where he makes fun of her Christmas calendar. If you search Jackmate Zoella calendar, it's fantastic. He just picks apart a £25 Christmas calendar that hasn't even got 25 days of Christmas in it. It's Li Shiping, sorry. Apologies for that. Yeah, my name's mixed up. I've done 2 lessons on the same day. Many of these theories then connect with the concept of prosumer. So as the social media web, the social web, the interactive web has grown, we've got Twitter, blogs, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, all kinds of places we can interact. Communication can flow faster and further than before, but in 2 directions more so than ever. And arguably the world is smaller. So many of you will be getting your news about, coronavirus, COVID-19, these kind of things from American sources. You'll be watching American celebrities. And that's a very different way of consuming media than what you had before, where it would be the British news, British celebrities on British TV, British radio. Now you can literally go on Instagram, Snapchat, and see a celebrity speaking from their own homes, can't you, at the moment? It's a very different world, thanks to the internet, really. People are no longer consumers, we're prosumers, because we're producing. That's where the pro of prosumer comes from. Rather than simply consuming the products, we're becoming the voices that can significantly change and impact them. And it does affect products, it does affect companies. It's all over the internet. People are constantly adapting and changing the media we see. There's so many examples of how this has been done, from Disney movies where fans have disliked the second part of a film. For example, Star Wars, people didn't particularly take well to The Last Jedi, so they brought back the original director, J.J. Abrams, and scrapped the ideas they did have for the 3rd film and tried to rewrite it to appeal to the fans. There's currently a petition going on to try and get the last season of Game of Thrones reshot because people did not like the way Khaleesi's story ended. That one I don't think will go very well, to be honest, because it's just impossible to make that happen. I think I mentioned before, there's even people out there who are trying to crowdfund a remake of Star Wars, The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, where they take out all the women and make a male-only version, which, again, impossible to make happen and pointless as well. So businesses are no longer in complete control of their products. Brands, messages, we have some say, we have some control. And that is the social web. Bloggers, microbloggers, forum posters, places like Reddit, social networks, they can spread messages and they can change our perception of things. It's very quick for people to switch their perception of some of these elements. So, recapping Butler from last week. More representation than audience, but it looks at how we respond to text as well. So you need to think about performativity and gender here. Don't worry about the media magazine part, because it's difficult for me to get that across to you. I'm not allowed to send it to you with copyright and things, so forget that part. But in terms of gender performativity, you need to think about how an audience responds to the performance of gender, the representation of gender that Zoella gives us, and how that could put certain people off, how it could draw certain people in. So Zoella typically is quite traditional. She's quite feminine, she focuses on beauty, cooking, recipes. These are all fairly domestic, stereotypical things. Who will that appeal to? Who might that put off? Can give you some ideas. Arguably there, I'd like you to use anything you can think of. This is a component too, so there's no prescriptive way of answering it. It doesn't mean you have to use audience theory, you have to use representation, language theory. It does have the word audience in the question, so that should be a bit of a hint that you should use more audience theory, but by all means use any theorist you can think of. Use some Roland Barthes, use some some of his semiotic theory. Think about the ways where it actually dresses her stage. She dresses the videos, how she uses her single camera techniques from that sheet I put on one of the earlier lessons. All these things are techniques that are appealing to an audience in different ways. So here's things you can use, and again, all you need to do is pause this video, go back to this slide, and you can use this to help answer your question. This is what the exam board suggests you could use to answer this question. Obviously, don't cram all of these into a 15-mark response. This is what you could use for a 30-mark response. So you haven't got to use everything here. You could use Gauntlet, his theory of identity, Shirky's end of audience, Hall's reception theory, that is his preferred negotiated oppositional theory, Jenkins' theory of fandom. You might talk about how online media products are determined by their producers. Remember, Zoella is her own producer, she's her own gatekeeper. That is having a say. You might bring in another example, if you can think of one, of online media products that do not have a single person behind them. It's more of a company based. Is that changing the way they represent? We as the audience being active participants in a production of a textual meaning, or are we as the audience passive participants in production of textual meaning? How far do we actually have any say over Zoella when she says, hey guys, let me know what you think of this video? Is she really going to go through her million comments and find out? Or are we just, getting a sense of parasocial interaction that's really meaningless? Demographics, age, gender, ethnicity, social class, all these things can affect the way we use online media. There are certain groups of people who will not feel reflection to Zoella because she doesn't look like them, she doesn't live like them, she doesn't sound like them, she doesn't do what they do. They've got clear difference in interest. Clearly I do not look, sound or act like Zoella. We can have very different interests in many ways. Psychographics, remember these are the different, the 4 C's we looked at last week. This is things like values, attitudes, lifestyle. Are you an aspirer, a reformer, etc.? Go back to that lesson if you are stuck here, or just Google psychographics, can really help a lot. Self-esteem, self-image may affect the way in which we use different blog posts. For example, Zoella's got a number of elements about anxiety, mental health, because she was a spokesperson for some mental health charities. So she had posts such as Just Say Yes, Panic Attacks, My Anxiety, where she discusses some of these experiences. And again, you may get instant gratifications or reflection if you've been through that. It might be quite nice to see other people going through some of the troubles you've experienced. So I want a 15-mark response to this question. So all you need to do is give me 3 Petal paragraphs. Get those on your blog, please. Those of you who are having troubles with your blog, drop me an email with this work in, please. That is it for this week. This would be a 50-minute response, 50, for 30 marks. So really don't spend more than 25 minutes on this, because you won't be helping yourself for the real exam. So 25 minutes, 15 marks. That's all I want from you at the moment. Maybe spend 5 minutes before just planning it out. As always, email me or send me a message on Moodle, which is actually better because I get a notification of that if you have any problems at all. And I can get to that as soon as I can for you. Thank you.